Good morning and welcome to the First Friday Entrepreneurship Call, or we call it the E-Call with K-State Research and Extension. The purpose of this call is to increase the local community's knowledge about the experts, the education, and the economic resources that are available to help small businesses and entrepreneurs and the towns that love them, because you can't have a good working environment without having a great town environment. We encourage partner sharing at the end. Today we have a guest speaker, but we also have lots of experts who are doing this in their community or have something to do with commercial kitchens. So we will have a lot of interaction and sharing because we've prompted it. But we also want you to feel free to add your expertise. We probably didn't know about it to ask you. As always, the call is being recorded and you will get a link to the website after when it's posted and a copy of the PowerPoints from Gary. Without further ado, Gary, you can go ahead and start getting your sharing ready for your PowerPoints. Our speaker today is Gary Satter with the Glacial Hills RDC on the importance of commercial kitchens and building rural businesses. So Gary, take it away.
Can you see that?
No, not yet.
You were gonna share.
No, you need to share, Gary, or else I'd be sharing my screen.
Okay.
So it's down at the bottom of your Zoom screen.
Yeah, I got to get back out of here now.
Yeah.
Little green button.
Yeah. His screen is full of PowerPoint right now. Thanks, everybody. It's fun to see who you are and where you're joining from. So keep that up. And if there's anything in the chat that you want to save, just open up your chat. There you go, Gary. It's starting to share. Good. Yeah, there you go. All right, take it away, Gary.
All right, very good. Well, good morning, everyone. I see lots of familiar names and faces that are on, but probably more that I don't know and haven't met. So it's exciting to have everyone around the state. When Tandy Rundus asked me to do this, I think last fall, I had watched a couple of these First Fridays, but I hadn't really thought about it until, a couple, 3 weeks ago when Nancy, I think, was starting to say it's coming up. So here we are, April 1. It's always good to be into April. I always think when you get to March that spring is here, but not always. But now with our up and down weather, we should be good to go for some warmer weather and hopefully more rain. So I'm excited that everybody is here, and I'm going to share my story. I am the executive director with Glacial Hills Resource Conservation Development in Wetmore, Kansas, and our Glacial Hills Food Center is in Horton, Kansas. Just a second here. Okay. So I wanted to give a little context and background on Glacial Hills to kind of set the stage because we had funding for this, and it was not to paint a rosy picture, but it wasn't probably the challenge that some of the other of you that have kitchens or planning kitchens. So I thought it was good to sort of explain where we came from and how this came together as far as the funding and who's doing it. So since 1990, Glacial Hills has been a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The mission is to develop community and business development and natural resource conservation projects and programs. The impacts are enhanced quality of life, economic growth, and natural resource conservation and community viability in Northeast Kansas. And I've been the director since 2009. When I say Northeast Kansas, that's how we started. That's where our focus is. But we did change our bylaws about 10 years ago to be a statewide organization. And we do have some projects that reach clear out to Concordia to clear down to southeast Kansas. So we're beyond northeast Kansas, but that's still our main area. Oops, did I skip? Okay, so the state of Kansas has helped us in northeast Kansas in building an entrepreneurial region. Some of you may remember and had access to some of this funding, but the Kansas legislature passed the Kansas Economic Growth Act of 2004. The Kansas Rural Business Tax Credit Program was created by this act that created 7 regions across Kansas to receive 75% state tax credits to fund each region's business development program. So Glacial Hills was fortunate enough to apply and was approved as the region for Northeast Kansas. And so that funding has helped us do a lot of things that I'll talk about briefly. So those funds have allowed us to create a revolving loan fund for rural entrepreneurs and businesses who are not able to obtain traditional funding. And I know a lot of you have revolving funds or access to funds. They're great to have. Banks are great, but banks don't always take the risk that maybe is needed. So those funds are needed. Business support services such as free counseling, planning, training, and technical assistance to grow and start rural businesses. We have the Enterprise Facilitation Program, Northeast Kansas Enterprise Facilitation. That's one of our programs that helps work with entrepreneurs. And then the Washburn Small Business Development Center is another partnership that we have. So we have those 2 programs that provide our business planning and support. We have a rural business incubator in Sabetha, the Glacial Hills Business Resource Center, and a shared use commercial kitchen that we're going to talk about here in Horton. And then we've done leadership training to develop leaders across the state or across our area, I'm sorry. And I know the rest of you have done that as well. So those tax credits allowed Glacial Hills to build about a $1.5 million funds for business development and support. Most of that is our revolving loan fund, but it also supports the business incubator and the commercial kitchen. Unfortunately, in 2012, the legislature stopped funding those tax credits. So since 2012, in the last 10 years, we've had no new funding coming into our program. The Glacial Hills Food Center is a shared use kitchen incubator located in Horton that meets the requirements of a licensed commercial food manufacturing facility. Nancy was just asking about licenses in Kansas. The facility does not have to have a food processing license. It's each business that uses it that has to have the license. It's available to rent to food entrepreneurs wanting to develop food products for their food-based businesses. The facility allows for large capacity cooking, canning, baking, freezing, packaging, and labeling of food products. Business planning and marketing assistance is available, and like I said, through those 2 programs. So available equipment, we have a 6-burner commercial gas stove with an oven, a gas convection oven, double door refrigerator and freezer, commercial tabletop mixer, commercial dishwasher, a 25-gallon steam kettle that I really suggest. They're expensive, but if you can afford one of those, they are great because you can do 25 gallons of barbecue sauce or salsa at a time, and it just really makes the process more efficient. Stainless steel work tables, a wood top bread table for making breads, pressure canners, water bath canners, pots, pans, small utensils, packaging machine, and cold and dry storage available. So with our business programming, we had entrepreneurs who were wanting and needing a commercial kitchen to develop their food products. So this sort of started back in 2010. We had entrepreneurs that were wanting to do food and they didn't really have a way to do it. So we looked for a good year, if not longer, for an empty building in our communities. And the word was out sort of. And so the Horton city manager knew that we were looking for a building, and he talked to the Horton Hospital, who had a a former medical clinic that they had received from a doctor that retired, and they were planning to open it and didn't. And so they wanted to donate it. And so we got that donation. We renovated the business office and reception area into the commercial kitchen at a cost of about $20,000. Size is approximately 1,000 square feet. It's big enough to do what you want to do, but bigger would be better. So just keep in mind as you look for places, 1,000 would be the minimum, I'd say for sure. But bigger, you know, if you had 2,000 and 3,000 square feet, that would be great. Renovation including new plumbing, electrical, heat, air, new flooring, and wall coverings. And the 6 former medical clinic exam rooms are used for offices, cookbook, library, break room, and storage. It really is 2 buildings joined by a breezeway, walkway. It's all enclosed. And so the exam rooms are on the one east side of the building, and the kitchen is on the west side. Kind of a unique arrangement. So a grant from Kansas Department of Ag Specialty Crop Program in 2011 was used to buy some of the equipment, not all the equipment, and to do programming for farmers and individuals to grow and utilize fruits and vegetables for cooking and food businesses. About $20,000 was used to buy equipment from the kitchen from both the grant and Glacial Hills funds. I think the grant had it was about half of that, $10,000. A part-time kitchen manager was hired for education and cooking classes from the grant. Of course, that grant has ended a long time ago, and there's no longer a manager. I do overseeing of the kitchen operation and the scheduling, which doesn't take a lot of time. The kitchen rents for $15 an hour. Each business person using the facility has to clean up after each use. If they don't, we charge them for a cleanup fee. When we were offering cooking classes, we were charging $15 a person, and we had up to 15 people. As you'll see here shortly when I show some pictures, we do have not a real big area. It's probably a 12 by 12 area that we could have tables and chairs and have classes in. And I would suggest, cooking classes are a great way to utilize your kitchen. There's people that's always interested in maybe not learning to cook from scratch, although, the young people do, but the different cuisine. We had different people. We had a chef from Kansas City. We had others. We had extension people that were, talking about European food and African food, and people just really love that. So currently, in the last 10 years, we've had as many as 8 businesses using the kitchen. Currently, there are 2 using it. And that's another thing, as you plan and operate a kitchen, those numbers do go up and down, or at least they have for us. We're always marketing. And so we do plan to increase those businesses using it. But if it's down to 2, like it is for us, then we're having to really fund some of the expenses that I'll talk about here shortly. From time to time, there are community members who will utilize the kitchen for their own cooking use, such as for big family dinners or parties, and Christmas time and Thanksgiving is always popular when it's easier just to come in and use the kitchen instead of dirtying up their own kitchen. There's been one person that's renting an office, one of those exam rooms that pays $225 a month. So that helps pay for some of the overhead cost. Sustainability is an ongoing challenge. The only cost now that we really have is the utilities, property taxes, and insurance, which come to about $5,500. Marketing is an ongoing effort. We've used brochures, newspaper ads, news articles, and social media. Cooking classes were a good way to educate the public, and they got to come and actually see it in action. And so word of mouth, once you get, sort of a core group, word of mouth is always good and is best. We offer business development planning, as I mentioned, to those who want to explore a food business. with our business development program, working with entrepreneurs. That's a good way too to share and work with those interested in food businesses. Without funding from Glacial Hills, and if we didn't have those tax credits funds that we have, we would have to, have other sponsors and donors that would help support the operation. So we are fortunate to have that funding, and I'm not trying to make everybody feel bad that you don't have that pot of funding, but I thought it was important to explain where Glacial Hills came and how we were able to do that. So just some photos of the kitchen. The big photo on the right has the 6-burner stove back in the corner there, and then the convection oven. And then on the left side is the 3-vat sink, and the tabletop mixer there is in the middle, the wood top stove or table, sorry. And then stainless steel, and we've got another stainless steel table that's on wheels that we roll around if we have to. The upper left is our 25-gallon steam kettle. The other piece of equipment with the funnel there, Dr. Fadi allowed us to borrow that. It was a filling machine. And so at the time, the people doing the barbecue sauce and the salsa and other things, they could use that to bottle their products. Unfortunately, I couldn't convince Dr. Fadi to let me keep it. So he took it back. Maybe it's available to others. I don't know. Those are expensive. They're 10,000 or so. I'd love to have one. But
And Gary, for those who don't know who Dr. Fadi is, he's now retired, but he was with the Kansas Value Added Food Labs at K-State. And so that lab still exists, but it has different directors now.
Good point. I always think everybody knows Dr. Fadi, but
I think most people
that's
do.
not true. And unfortunately, or fortunately, he retired, but he's in another position with USDA. So, he's still available and accessible. And then the bottom left is our double door freezer and refrigerator. So again, it's 1,000 square feet. It's not a big size, but it does work. So there's our steam kettle with barbecue sauce. And then the folks, Claire and Glenn, are again using that filling machine. Glenn's sitting there and he's filling the bottles and she's putting the labels in the caps. Well, I think the labels were already on the caps. And so it really is an efficient process. They still use the kitchen. In fact, they're the one that use it the most right now. They're in there probably at least once a month with their barbecue sauce. It just takes them a little more time to fill their bottles.
And I'm really grateful for these pictures, because now I can understand why more space would be better. It was hard for me to imagine a cook that didn't have enough space in that kind of kitchen, but now I can see.
Yeah. This is Steph's kitchen, who had a 2-acre garden, and she was in there every week during the summer. She had about 10 different products that she was making, from pickles, what she's doing there, to salsa, to jams and whatnot. Unfortunately, she got her own kitchen and so hasn't been using it. But again, when she was in there, she and her husband was there, and maybe 1 or 2 other people would come and help, and they would spend all day and make the different items. And again, they needed a lot of space, because you'd have one filling jars and the other one over at the steam kettle cooking, and they had pots on the stove. And so, yeah, you do need lots of space to spread out. So these are just some pictures of our cooking classes. They were always interactive. Everybody got involved. You just didn't sit there. Now, the lower left was doing some teaching before the class started, but once the class or once the preparation started, everybody had a job or got involved, got your hands wet, so to speak, and everybody loved that. Again, Christmas time, they were making I call them sugar pops, but there's cake pops maybe. But again, you know, people got involved. They got to decorate their pops. This was a chef from Kansas City. Actually, was my brother-in-law, but he's an executive chef at Nordstrom's in Oak Park Mall. And so I twisted his arm to come up one time and do a class on. I think he was, you know, just prep and how to cut different things was that class. And then the right side was Becky Rhodes, who was with KDA at the time. She did several classes. She did a pie baking. I'm not sure what they were doing with this one. I think they were doing some fresh strawberries and maybe it was the pie. But anyway, everybody has a good time with cooking classes. So I would strongly suggest that you do that. And that's it.
That is fantastic. And you even have supply the aprons, apparently.
Yes, we did.
That's fantastic. And I'll call your attention to the excellent resources that Janelle Dobbins is providing in the chat, including information about the Kansas Value Added Food Lab. You can capture that for yourself if you want to go right to them today by going into your chat to the ellipse, the three dots at the top right, and ask to save the chat. It usually goes into your documents folder, but if you just do a search on Zoom, while you can see them. But I will send out a link to the recording and try to capture all of this information, these excellent links. There's a lot of resources out there for you. So now I'm going to open thank you, Gary. That was excellent. I am grateful for the pictures because now I understand why you could use more room with lots of cooks in the kitchen and lots of bottles and jars. You need more room. All right. So I'm going to open the channel. Leanne, since you're sitting in a parking lot, do you want to share what your experience is in Hodgman County?
Sure. Ours is called the Elk Plaza Culinary Incubator, and our marketing tagline is that we're not hatching chicks, we're hatching dreams. And so the way we generally try to explain it to people is that, you know, if you wanted to get healthier, you would join a gym probably rather than building the entire thing yourself. And the whole idea is based around the entrepreneurial mindset. You know, start small, do your research, tweak as you go. There's no reason to you know, go broke while you're trying to come up with your new business. We had a little bit different story. Ours was kind of more of a, I don't know the right way to put, maybe more of a bootstrap from the start. I was actually working on a USDA grant to start a culinary incubator, and called Angela Wells from KDA. And there are a lot of wonderful people at KDA, but boy, Angela is just really, really wonderful. She came out, visited with me. And, you know, while we were visiting, we had that school that had just been closed. It was our business incubator. And she looked around and, you know, we decided after checking off all the boxes that really it would probably cost us less than $800 to get our culinary incubator licensed. And so just a few small tweaks. I mean, really I think like maybe 2 days after I met with her, I happened to see a 3-compartment sink from a business in Russell that was for sale. And so I drove out and bought it all excited, and then realized I couldn't get it home in a Ford Focus. So, I mean, I had to make 2 trips to get it. But I think the thing that took us the longest was getting a plumber to get the sink plumbed, which was kind of crazy. Right now we have 2 main businesses that use it, but we also use it for classes, mainly youth classes, healthy cooking classes for kids. But ours, we charge $25 per half day or $50 a full day. And then we go less than that if they're low energy users. For example, our honey people that are there, they're just transferring honey from bigger containers to those tiny little bears. They really don't use anything but a counter and a sink. So they're going to use a lot less resources than the lady that comes in at 5 a.m. and cans until midnight, you know? And so we kind of base our prices on that. Ours is sustainable at this point only because it's part of the bigger business incubator. So if we closed it, we probably wouldn't save much on air conditioning and lighting and things like that. I in the long run, I think maybe, even though I really have a lot of equipment envy looking at Gary's photos, I think in the long run, this might have been the better way for us to go, just because there were a lot of people really interested in getting it started. You know, they would come, I've got, you know, grandma's salsa recipe. I've got to get in there now. This is the next big thing. And then when we finally got it open, they realized that they were probably too busy to start that second or third business. And so that was the big disappointment for me. I thought we had like 12 people lined up and they just, you know, dropped off. So it is good. Right now we have a new, a gentleman that has an, gosh, my mind just went blank, catering service. And he's keeping it pretty busy right now. And I think honestly, within a year or two, he may build his own or purchase another building closer to his home. And then, you know, he won't be one of our customers. I would encourage everybody to get in touch with From the Land of Kansas. They have some, you know, their food labels, their the barcodes and things. There's just so many good things about partnering with them. Again, Dr. Fadi was my hero, and I know there's someone else there now at K-State that can help people as well, but he was just great. One of the things that he helped me with, you know, I was still wanting to go out and buy this equipment. He said, I think you should just slow down and wait and let people tell you what they need. And honestly, most people bring their own equipment. What we ended up buying under his advice, he helped us find salsa testers. And, you know, that was the main thing. And then we supplied the strips for the sanitizing sinks and things. I don't know, is there more you want to hear, or is that about it?
I am really grateful for your perspective, because I think that sustainability issue is huge. I mean, Gary said that they had money, but for the rest of us, how do we get by on less? And I think that sustainability issue is huge. Thank you, Leanne. Is there anybody that has questions for Leanne? Leanne's trying to participate in the conference today. So if you don't have questions, or if, I mean, I'll let it up to her. I'm not trying to do her out.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm Jennifer Roush, City of Sharon, Kansas. I'm the clerk here. Insurance. Our city office is in an old school building, so therefore we have the old school kitchen. However, that's kind of where my counsel, and I'm kind of curious, how would that affect your insurance for a commercial kitchen?
Well, ours has been a business incubator since it was not, maybe I didn't say this, but ours is in an old school as well. But it was not the kitchen that was in the grade school that was torn down. Ours was the old home ec room. So we call them flip kitchens. It's like two home kitchens, you know, one on either side. And then the concession stand was connected to that. I don't know how much it raised the insurance, to be honest. It's actually operated by the township, but it falls under the same insurance there with our business incubator. And we don't have like big fryers and things. So I do know that makes a difference, because we didn't have to do the overhead sprinkling and things. That can make a big difference, I think, on what your equipment is. Ours is more like what you would see in a home kitchen, but just multiples.
Good question.
We have liability insurance for Glacial Hills, and that covers our buildings, which is another issue. But anyway, for that building and for the kitchen, the liability part is more expensive, because if somebody gets hurt, even though we do require, we don't always get it, that people that use it have their own liability insurance. Still, that's why it is more expensive.
So Londa Nowataki, there she is.
Yeah, I was going to mention pretty much what Gary just said. And if you didn't see in the chat, I'm the state extension food safety specialist for K-State as well as University of Missouri. And so I'll just say that, yes, I mean, just like Gary and Leanne have said, you know, you need to have your own insurance for the building and for, just like Gary said, the liability of people tripping in the building and things like that. But every person using the kitchen, you know, the license is their license. Again, like Leanne and Gary have said, the food inspection license is under them. It's not you as the incubator, it's them. And so the insurance also, again, like Gary said, they should have their own insurance. So their own liability insurance. So for the product liability. So you as an incubator should not have to take on the full like product liability insurance. But anyway, but Gary already answered kind of what I was going to say.
No, actually, I think that was very helpful. You know, you need to hear it in different ways. So, and plus, Londa, I want them to see your face and know that you're accessible to them. Janelle and Londa are excellent resources to the state. And we do have new folks in the Kansas Value Added Food Labs. I know Karen Blakesley. Londa, tell me the name of the director of the Kansas Value Added.
Yeah, Kelly Getty and Dr. Kelly Getty and then Karen Blakesley are the co-directors, I think is the right term. Yeah.
Yes, I knew there were two of them, but Karen's is the only name I know right now. Thank you. You'll soon know them just like we know Dr. Fadi.
Nancy, additionally, we have them list us as an additional named insured. Our attorney just suggested that. I don't know if that's a hard and true requirement, but it gave one more layer of protection.
You have who? The Kansas Value Added?
No, I mean, the people that have licenses that are renting the kitchen on their insurance policy, they list the culinary incubator as an additional named insured.
Good. And Londa is affirming that that's a great strategy, a great plan. Good. Okay. And
I'll just say briefly, it's always good. I mean, again, Gary and Leanne are much better suited to answer this question, but it's always good to tell your insurance agent ahead of time and, and make sure that they know exactly what you're doing and all those things so that they can be prepared. You hope that nothing will go wrong. We at K-State Research and Extension, we can try to help you make sure that there won't be any problems, but you have to be prepared in case there ever is. So it's better to have your insurance people know ahead of time so you can prevent problems in the future.
So thank you, everyone. And please do, we learn from each other. The concept of Ubuntu is really clear here. A question for Gary, and I've invited Rick McNary here because he's such a good farm to table advocate of commercial kitchens. This might be a Gary and Rick question. In your experience, what evidence have you seen to the community health or the community development as a result of having this kitchen available? Or any commercial kitchen?
When we started ours and still the Horton community, the chamber, the economic development were excited that we selected Horton as the place to develop this kitchen. And they have, helped promote it. In fact, they gave us some initial, I think it was just a one-time small grant when we were buying equipment and remodeling. So, they've been very supportive, and obviously that's necessary in whatever endeavor you do. But yeah, it's been good.
Well, I myself have been to that facility more than once teaching, and it's always great in a small town to have cars around a facility instead of a building with a roof that's caving in.
And, I always suggest for those that are looking to develop something, look for those empty buildings. Historic buildings are great to renovate. They can be expensive, but if you can find one that's been well maintained, and if it had a kitchen in it for whatever reason, I mean, that's always a great start. Churches, I think, are maybe another opportunity to have a kitchen. and some of them are pretty good sized, or they have a fellowship hall next to it. You know, scheduling and whatnot could be a challenge, but I've always thought maybe that's an opportunity if someone could find a church willing to work with you.
So I see Pat's question. I'm going to hold that for one moment. Excuse me. I'm going to hold Patrick Brown's question for Pat Malgaris's question. A follow-up, wondering about how you think the kitchen and the facility I think that's the same question. How you think the kitchen and the facility contribute to community development or health? I mean, those kitchen classes have to be both for the youth in Hodgman County and in Horton have to be a community builder.
Yeah, we had a following when we were doing our classes. We had a mom and a couple of daughters, and then another husband and wife team right there in Horton, that he was there every time. Not that guys can't come, because we did have guys, but you know, there was a husband and wife that loved to cook and loved to learn. I've talked to, and I have a couple of people that want to do classes again, and then COVID hit a couple of years ago. And so hopefully that we can get back and start doing those again.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kitchen manager is probably helpful to creating that kind of interest, do you think?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Mhm. And you don't have that right now.
No.
Yeah. Leanne, how about you? How are those youth classes generated? Is it by the 4-H agent?
You know, I don't know that 4-H has had any cooking classes there. I'm trying to remember. We may have, generally through economic development and makerspace type classes. So like we did a cupcake one. The first time we did it was, you know, around a business plan. So each child would have their cupcake business, you know, and learn to write a business plan and things. The first time I held that was at the courthouse. Very, very, very bad idea. For months, they found frosting in the, you know, buttons for the elevator and things. I will never be allowed to do that again. So the next one, you know, is at the incubator space, and that makes it so much better. Cleanable surfaces where, you know, it just works better. Yeah.
All wisdom
it
comes from experience.
yeah. And it's just really set up well for it. The way ours is, it was in the school. So, you know, you can send the kids, you know, into the gym to burn off some steam, or to go sit down in what used to be the, you know, the area for the concession stand, so they can eat their snacks that they've prepared and things. And it's really a pretty good location for classes like that.
Excellent. Patrick wants to know, when a new client wants to use the kitchen, how fast can they start using it? Is the outside of scheduling, does the kitchen have to be inspected with the client present and operating? Is that, I think that's about licensing maybe?
Yeah, they have to get their license, and you know, that in our area, the inspector, you know, within a couple of weeks really can get that scheduled, and they meet with the person there. I usually try to be there as well, just to answer any questions, you know, about the kitchen. But and those inspectors do change and have turnover. But for us, it's, you know, it's been fairly quick.
Like weeks?
Oh yeah, less than a month.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I think the longest it ever took us was one time someone needed to be licensed both with KDA and FDA, I think. And then it took a little longer to get that second inspector in there.
Yeah, FDA is a lot more involved.
Good. Londa was also, I don't know whether you've seen this happen, Londa, but Londa also indicated that if you can find a restaurant kitchen, what's the impediments to that as a commercial kitchen?
Yeah, and by the way, I'll just comment quick on the FDA versus KDA question too, or there wasn't a question, but when you talked about FDA. So FDA inspection is only required, well, generally speaking, it's required if you're going to be selling across state lines. So if your product is going to be sold out of state, then you need to have federal inspection of it, but it's just going to be sold in the state. Generally speaking, it would just be KDA inspection, but that's a general statement, I'll say. Yeah, so, and like Gary talked about, you could check with like your local church, possibly to see if they have kitchen space that, that they might be willing to share. Again, like Gary talked, Gary, I think both Gary and Leanne talked about earlier, the food processing license or food establishment license, whatever license might be needed, is tied to that particular person making a particular product in a particular place. So, Gary or Leanne are not the one holding a food safety license. They're just the space that's provided to this person making a product in that space. So, anyway, you can check with, a local restaurant. Maybe, they have space, if they're closed on Mondays anyway, maybe they would let you use their space on Mondays or something. The inspector would need to know, which space you're using to make what product, and you'd need to have it separate. So you'd have to find a restaurant that's willing to work with you on that. But I, like Gary said, I really encourage people to check out like church kitchens and that sort of thing too. If you're in a place that you're not near Gary's facility or Leanne's facility, if you're further away from one of those shared use incubator type kitchen facilities, there could be other kitchens too. I can put it in the chat. There's Katie has a nice checklist. I like it, that has a checklist that shows kind of the things that they would look for when they're inspecting a space. So, so you can have a general sense of what's needed in that space. I'll put that in the chat.
Londa, I think Janelle may have, but feel free to.
She hasn't put that particular one in. She's
okay,
put a lot
okay.
of other good ones in, but I'll find that one.
Okay, good. Is the community kitchen responsible for, I think this was answered by Londa. Is the community kitchen responsible for ensuring that users, that users have the proper licensing? So Gary, before you let somebody use the kitchen, would you ask to see their licensing?
Yes. And like I say, I usually try to be there when the inspector's there. It's not always possible, but yes. And yeah, they have to give me a copy of the license.
Good. Okay. Any advice on storage? Do you allow most people to store their equipment in the room, or do you have another room that stuff can be stored?
I'm fortunate that I've got those exam rooms that they can keep their equipment in. I think we've only had one business that maybe did that. The Steps Kitchen that I showed, where she had a 2-acre garden and was in there every week. She brought a lot of her pots and pans and whatnot of her own. So I don't remember. She did store, I guess, containers there with us. And so, yeah, if you've got that ability to store.
Yeah. So
It's helpful.
the next question I think is applies to that lady with a 2-acre garden. If a group or individual is not selling to the public, do they need insurance and licensing?
This is Lee. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Gary.
Well, somebody can probably talk to this better. There are things that you can sell direct, like at the farmer's market, that you don't have to have a license. There are other things that you can't sell at the farmer's market, and so you do need a license. So Janelle or somebody can probably speak to that better.
Yeah, and in our area, sometimes it's like a couple sister-in-laws that want to get together and make 500 breakfast burritos and divide it up between their families or something. They don't require a license. They're not selling anything, but they still rent it and don't require insurance.
It's, selling to person is okay in a lot of cases, but when you want to sell wholesale through Dillon's or Walmart, then that's definitely when you need a license.
Perfect. There's lots of good resources going into this chat, and I hope you'll take advantage of those. Is there anybody? This is fantastic discussion. Thank you so much.
And when I say 1,000 is a minimum, I still say that, although I'm thinking if we didn't have a third of our space, you could still operate. It might get a little tight. So when you're looking for that space, you know, the bigger the better, but don't get discouraged if you have a place already or you've talked or whatever that's not even 1,000. You can make it work. All you need is a stove and a 3-vat sink and a work table. I mean, sort of as a minimum.
Yeah, we even had a tea blender that really all she needed was a work table. She just had her different teas there and was just mixing them at the table. So some people don't need much at all.
Yeah, exactly.
How about what's the requirement for charitable groups that want to use it for a fundraiser?
Yeah, I can speak to the licensing question on that. So, so actually that publication that I put in and Janelle had put it in earlier, that MF 3138 .pdf one, that one explains when licensing is needed and when licensing is not needed. And like Gary and Leanne have said, if you're selling the product, if you're selling it direct to consumer, like so through a farmer's market or through a farm stand, there's the lower risk products do not need a license, but the higher risk products do. So that publication kind of explains which ones are higher risk, and which ones are lower risk. If you're sending, like Gary said, if you're selling to Walmart or Dillon's, generally speaking, everything will need a license. It's only like whole produce that would not need a license if you're selling it to Walmart, generally speaking. But yeah, so and in that publication, we do talk about charitable groups as well. Actually, there's no requirement for licensing if it's a charitable group where the manager of the charitable group is not receiving a salary, then from that proceeds of those sales, then you do not need a license. But yeah, that's explained in that MF 3138 publication too.
I am so grateful you're here. So is scheduling a problem? One person is suspecting that Saturday and Sunday are very busy. Is scheduling often a problem, Gary?
It hasn't been, and even when we had, 8 businesses using it, and I had a schedule that I tracked everybody, but usually if somebody wanted to be in there at the same time, they could move, whether it was, a morning and afternoon. Yeah, weekends for those folks that do have full-time jobs or part-time jobs is popular, but there's a lot of people that still, even a late afternoon, once they get off work and they can work into the evening during the week, that's what some have done also.
Yeah.
But obviously, the more businesses, then the more the scheduling can become a challenge.
So you've named some.
Problem to have.
Oh, sorry.
Um,
So you've named some really important things. I think the sustainability issues and the licensing and the insurance are really important things. But a question is here: what do you wish? What's the most important thing communities need to know before embarking on this adventure, and what do they need most?
This is Leanne. I would say at least for our community, the sustainability part, because we didn't need something that we couldn't afford to keep going. And then past that, I would just say patience. Sometimes it gets a little frustrating when you don't have the people in, the numbers that you thought you would have. And we almost pulled the plug on it once, and then, it got busy again. So I think those two things, patience and the mindset to make sure it's sustainable.
Maybe some of you have a building that the city owns or the county owns. I would really be cautious about getting into a partnership with a unit of government, not to badmouth them, but you maybe don't always have total control. And I know of one lady that was trying to do that, and it never did work out because the city was just putting too many demands on it. So just a word of caution.
I wonder, for every problem, there's an opportunity. I wonder if there's a way to give over that portion to somebody else. And maybe what you're suggesting is find another way so that they're not trying to micromanage.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. but
Nancy, oh,
caution. Yes, Londa.
sorry, if you don't mind, somebody sent me a private question in the chat, and I thought I would just clarify if others were curious. When we talked about the charitable organizations and if they need a license to sell food products or not. So if it's like a 4-H group or a church group or whatever, that sort of group, there's no limit on the number of times per year that they can sell without a license. So they can, they still have to use good food safety practices, but there's no limit. But if it's like just a person that's just trying to make a little extra cash and wants to sell beer rocks or whatever at the farmer's market, if they do that less than 6 times a year, they do not need a license for that. But if they're doing that more than 6 times per year, then they do need a license. So there's a difference if it's a charitable organization versus just a person trying to, make some money for themselves on the side. So
And
and again, that MF 3138 explains all that. And
That's
16
awesome.
pages of detail.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's always good to see. It's always reassuring to see it in writing so that you know that what Londa said came into your brain appropriately. Thank you for that. Anybody else have questions? So at one point we had 71 people on this call, and that tells you how much interest there is. But I think I'm really grateful for Leanne's cautions. Yeah, Londa.
I was just going to say, I want to just give a shout out to people like Gary and Leanne. I think they're, if you're a small scale food seller, you want to start selling products and you don't really know, you don't really, how do I say, you don't know where to start, working with somebody like Gary and Leanne is so helpful, to really just have people that have great experience and have, have been through it, and they can kind of help you walk through the process. I think that's, a great asset of having a shared use kitchen like they're describing. So I just appreciate the work that they're doing.
Mhm.
Well, Nancy's going to post my PowerPoint, and it's got my contact information. I don't think it's got my email. I should have put it on there. But, feel free to contact me anytime. I'm willing to help and answer questions.
And given the fact that you just said that, I'd be glad to change it when it arrives. So-
Well, I'll add it before I send it to you.
Okay, great.
I think one of the biggest things that we can do for people with the kitchens, and it's going to sound silly, but it's not always the space. It's getting them to get in contact with the people they need that can help them. So I can't count the number of times people have called and said, well, I don't want to call KDA. I don't want, it's like, no, you start with them. You don't wait till later. They can help you so much through this process. And sometimes it's someone realizes they don't need the commercial kitchen. Just like Londa said, they don't need it. They can do what they're doing somewhere else. But they've been afraid to reach out to the people that could help them.
Oh, that's such an important thing. And I've said so often, I think the importance of this First Friday is to see the people who can help us and understand they're not scary. They're here to make you succeed. And there's one of those not scary people, Janelle Dobbins.
Yeah, I'll put the plug in for, thank you, Leanne, very much. Yes, here at KDA, our goal at the end of the day is to help everyone out and either, figuring it out. And that's something we do definitely with our From Land of Kansas members. The first thing when they reach out to us to apply is we work with them and figure out if they need a license, if they don't, what resources, and we have easy contacts with our food safety, meat and poultry, anyone else. And everyone's goal at the end of the day is to either get businesses open or keep them open. So we are happy to always help, but we do know some folks can be scary. So we think that we are scary. So we appreciate Gary and Leanne and everyone who sends folks our way, because yes, we will answer those questions. And Londa and all the K-State Research and Extension folks are also great partners to help get businesses open or help them grow if that's their next goal.
So, and Janelle, while you're there, we've also had Janelle from the Land of Kansas at least once, if not twice, on our recordings. And so if you're still wondering about that, send them a recording first, or send them the recording second after you've told them that. so that you can help mitigate the fear factor.
Yep, we are truly here to help folks. So please reach out to us at any time.
Yeah. Oh man, I am just so grateful. Good. And from the land of Kansas, join now. Good. Thank you very much. Sammy's on there too. Sammy is with the from the land of Kansas as well, Sammy Gleason. So thank you both for joining us. Any other last thoughts? Any sharing that you want to make while you're opening your mics? I will tell you that we just completed a grant workshop this week with 45 participants from all over the state. And those workshops are ongoing. We have another one or two always on the timeline. So here's where you can sign up for grant writing classes. They're $60 and they last 6 hours. And we'll get you started so that you understand that it's just a question of getting started. That's the scariest part of grant writing. Like everything else, it's getting started. That's the hard part. And this month, the people in the parking lot are sitting at the Network Kansas Connection workshop. But next month, Eric Peterson, the president and COO of Network Kansas, and Americ Neep with the e-community programs are going to tell us about an exciting announcement about program expansions. So if you've wanted to be an e-community and you couldn't be because they were full, they've received new funding, and you can look at those. I went to the Weekend conference last week and got 5 new speakers for to fill out our calendar. If you want to know what the next calendar events is for the K-State grant writing or for First Friday, you can find them in the chat. And one more chance. Anybody have anything they want to share?
Hey, Nancy, I did drop in there because Gary talked about that he got a specialty crop block grant. Literally here for 2022, it just closed yesterday, March 31st, but anyone who has done grants knows it's not something you can do in a week or two. So I would say now's the time to kind of start looking at it, talk to Gary more about when they did a specialty crop block grant, because those are something that has to be for the industry of specialty crops. So an incubator kitchen where it's helping multiple folks would be approved for something like that. But I would say, yes, start taking those classes now from K-State Research and Extension about grant writing, start reading about the grants, reading about previous ones that have been awarded, and getting educated, because usually we have the grant application only open for about 5 weeks. So if you can have done a lot of the steps beforehand, then when that application process opens in the spring of next year, you'll be ready to apply.
Fantastic. Good information. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, and the video and the chats will be available at the end of this. It'll probably take me a little bit with all the links today, but that's great. I thought our time today would be appropriately ended with a quote from Anthony Bourdain, that celebrity chef and author, who said, "Without experimentation, a willingness to ask questions and try new things, we shall surely become static, repetitive, and moribund." So none of us want to be those things. Thank you all for joining us today.